Joyful blessings, everyone. This is Kaylin Castell, and I'm here to share with you a story about Nicole Christine, the light and shadow. And I was awakened this morning with a message from Nicole that story needs to be told. And this is something that I haven't shared with very many people. A few people have known about it, and of course, it is my side of the story. So I just want to make that clear. I understand that. Also wanted to say that behind me is this amazing painting done by a priestess sister here in Tucson, Torne Wolf, and it just felt like her presence and her energy needed to be here as well. So this is a story about light and shadow, and I want to say that I just really appreciate how the story ends, and that that the shadow pieces were worked through, but it took a while. It was not something that happened quickly. So we're going to be looking at, basically Nicole was human like the rest of us. I'm human like the rest of us. The challenge that we have in not taking things personally. I have taken things very personally and continue to notice when that's happening for me. This is also about listening beyond what we think is being said. And that's clearly what happened here in this situation in the story I'm about to tell. And also that it can take some time to clear these shadow places. It took a good 5 years for this to happen. So I will get on with the story, and I want to share a few things before we get into the deeper part of the story. I have shared before in other videos about the first Magdalene initiation in the lineage of Nicole Christine that happened on the September equinox, September 22nd, 1996. And this whole process came about because the women you see in this photo asked Nicole for more. And she didn't know what to do at first. She was like not expecting that. We're like, we want more. And so someone suggested that we work with the Magdalene energy, and then she said, okay, and she figured out how to do that, and we had our initiation. So I just want to tell you who's here. This is my mom, Marilyn Massey. She was in this circle with the Magdalene, our whole Magdalene journey. She completed the journey, and then died in August, almost exactly 2 years later, August of 1998. And her story, her death plays into this. Then Catherine Astar, Karen Riker, there's me, Gina Dawn, Beth Malcolm, Kai Goodwillie, of course Nicole, and Catherine Bodie Friedrich, and we were all dressed or had some sort of red, except it looks like Catherine Astar. Anyway, we were honoring the Magdalene red as best we could. And so just something to know about this Magdalene Circle is that we continued to meet until well into 2006. So we met monthly after our process was complete. We met monthly because we needed to continue. We don't meet very often anymore, but Karen Riker and Catherine Astar and I, along with Jeanette, who you're going to get to meet as I tell this story, we still meet pretty regularly, not monthly anymore. Anyway, also I just wanted to share these images. I shared this before. We did this big ceremony in 1997 where we took a journey down through all the 7 gates into through the Venus Venus journey on the land in Sedona. Lady Olivia was there. It was huge. It was a life-changing ceremony for me to see it enacted, to have us enact at each gate something powerful and the descent. And then that night we did a shadow dance. So here's me dancing, here's Nicole dancing. I don't know who the other people are. But we were in someone's basement. We thought that was perfect for a shadow dance. And then the next day we went back on the land, and in the reverse order went back through all the 7 gates and reclaimed what had been left the days before, but in a new way. So we left behind the distortions and reclaimed something new. And it's in essence what we're doing with the Venus work now in Venus alchemy. So it was such a powerful journey, and that happened back in 1997. It's just amazing to think about how long ago that was. Also wanted to share with you Nicole's cabin. This is Nicole sitting in front of her cabin. And she moved here after the Venus, after our Magdalene emergence ceremony in April of 1997. It was not long after that she moved up to Sedona. And I think she actually might have gone to Flagstaff first, and then eventually she wound up in Sedona on Oak Creek in this cabin, and was there for a couple of years. And there was a huge flood that happened in the 2000s after she had left, and it washed away the cabin. And then the property was sold to some people that have renamed it Angel Valley Ranch, and that is where we had our first Venus Temple Templar gathering initiation thing in February of 2007. And you can see this is the Venus Temple node behind her cabin. You can't see it that well, but if you've seen the other videos on the Venus Templars, you'll maybe recognize that this is part of that Venus Temple knoll. So literally the cabin kind of sitting at the foot of the Venus Temple, that Nicole lived there all those years without knowing. And it wasn't revealed until she had been gone from there for a few years. And then this is just a somewhat faded wide-angle view of Sedona that I found with the picture of the cabin. So I'm not exactly sure. I know that there was mesa you could hike up on, and you could see some of Sedona from there, some of these amazing red rocks from there, but I'm not sure if that's where that was taken or where. Anyway, spent a lot of time with Nicole at her cabin in Sedona. And I also spent time, this is at a priestess or Magdalene emergence. I think it's a Magdalene emergence, June 3rd, 1998. And you can see here's Nicole, here's me. So this is just different versions of around the table of who was sitting where. And it was just such a amazing thing for me, because as I've shared, the opportunity for me of being involved in this priestess work was to finally feel like I was being accepted for who I was. I spent a lot of my life on a spiritual path, and in, not kind of beyond what most ordinary people experienced. My parents were TM teachers. They were into Rosicrucians and Unity Church and some pretty out there things. And so, and when I was raising kids, I was kind of like on the down low kind of mom. I didn't really talk about much of my spiritual background or feel that it was safe to do that. So here is the first time in many years since my time at Mauritia International University, where I went when I was 19 to 22, that I actually felt there were people who could really see me for who I was. And Nicole for sure could really see me. Now, something also I want to share is that Nicole was always pushing me to be more of who I was, and to face my fears. And one of them was just even in the check-in in our priestess circles, how terrified I was to speak in front of people. My heart would pound. I had trouble hearing what other people were saying until I was done sharing, because my heart was pounding and I was so worried about whatever I was going to say. I couldn't focus on what other people were talking about. It took a lot of years. Actually, it took a few years of me doing that, and I just kept pushing myself because there was so much to that was bringing me joy and life force, and just it was magical. So it's just one of the really amazing gifts that I got from that process, so that I can now be in front of people without having that fear. I still get a little nervous, but not like I used to. Also, in setting up the story, I want to talk about this chapel where all of the priestess initiations in Tucson took place for many years, whether they were the priestess initiation or the divine creation high priestess initiation. We also did, this is the altar, and this is the doorway into the chapel. And I'm going to say a little bit more about, because Nicole had always asked, as you came into the doorway, she always asked the questions, or do you realize you're about to be initiated into this process? Are you aware that this may forever change your life? I forget the exact questions that she asked, but something like that. And this, I also just wanted to share, this is the last big ceremony that we did at the chapel with Nicole. We have Karen Riker here, Nicole, me, Jeanette, who's going to be part of the story, and Catherine, a star or a spirit dancer. And we were honoring the activation of the last Venus temple. It had been 40,000 years since it had been active. And you can see the purple Venus Templar flag here. The rest of the flags are aligned along the wall. So, so this was such an amazing thing because we didn't know that Nicole wasn't going to be with us in 2008. Now, I have to back up the story quite a bit because we're going to go back to 1998. And my mom was diagnosed with rectal colon cancer in July of 1998. And she had been putting together her will starting in January. Like somehow, I think she knew something was up. She was only 64 when this was going on. I was 42. So she had written into her will, and my mom had a very small estate. It didn't even go into probate. It was such a small estate. So just to give you kind of a picture of what this is about. And she wanted to leave money to the Transcendental Meditation movement because she'd been a Transcendental Meditation teacher and it was a big part of her life. But I suggested to her, because the TM movement didn't really need it, I suggested to her that the priestess community in Tucson had been more supportive to her and had been a bigger part of her life the last couple of years. So maybe she would want to leave the money in some way to the priestess community and perhaps maybe directly to Nicole herself, who was writing a book at the time on the Magdalene journey, the Under Her Wings. So my mom did that. She actually changed her will and left the money directly to Nicole, and so that would help support the furtherance of the Magdalene work that we had been doing. And so I had the pleasure and the honor of being able to gift that money to Nicole after my mom died in 1998. Now, this is something that Nicole actually writes about in her book, Under Her Wings. But because there was a huge misunderstanding that had taken place, my name is Melanie in that book. Well, I'm going to explain how that happened here in just a moment. So this is Gina, Don, and I. We got inspired in 1998, soon after my mom passed, actually, to do another Magdalene Circle. Nicole is living in Sedona. She was living in her cabin. And we thought, there'd been a lot of priestess circles that had happened by other facilitators in Tucson, and maybe they'd want to do a Magdalene Circle. So we decided to create the second Magdalene Circle in Tucson with Nicole's blessing. And that's a whole other amazing story that I'll tell some other time. And so about 3 years passed. We finished that circle in June of 1999. I guess it's maybe 2.5 years. We're in, late, probably December of 2001. And Gina, Don, and I are on a hike, and we're talking about maybe doing another Magdalene Circle. And what would be what's the evolution of the energy of this field since we did our last Magdalene Circle? And what I was immediately thinking of was this: I had just recently, like the night before, seen a Star Trek episode, Voyager episode, where Voyager, the ship is pulled into this void. And as soon as they stumble into this void, as soon as they stumble into it, they are attacked by several other ships that are in the void, and a lot of their supplies and things are stolen from them. And this is how the ships that have been in the void for a long time have been surviving, as they attack new ships when they come in. So Captain Janeway, woman captain, she says, well, if we work together, because no one has enough power in their own ship to get out of the void by themselves. So she's like, well, if we pool our resources, maybe we can get out of here together. But some of them are so into the fighting and the, stealing from each other, and the idea of limited resources and there's not enough to go around and that kind of thing, that they're just not willing. But there are several that are like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and so they do pool their resources and they do finally get out. And I'm like, this is what we need to be doing. We need to know that there is more than enough for everyone, that we can work together and that we can accomplish far more together than on our own, and that from that place of cooperation and collaboration, this is something to really focus on in the next Magdalene Circle. So Chima, Don, and I are really excited about this, and we realize we don't know if Nicole, she's back in Tucson now, is going to be wanting to facilitate a Magdalene Circle. She's just completing a Priestess Circle. So we called her and left her a message and said that we had these new ideas and we're really excited and we wanted to talk to her, and that we understood that she might be wanting to do a Magdalene Circle. If she didn't, we were interested, and also we would be interested in helping her or giving her our ideas if she was going to do another Magdalene Circle. What Nicole heard was we were doing another Magdalene Circle, we were competing with her, and we were taking away her livelihood. And she was completely triggered, and so in those days, back in the late 90s, 98, 99, this was in 2000, 2001, we were using a voicemail system. And the voicemail system, you could just respond back to a voicemail. I don't know, you could *6 it or whatever you could do anyway. You could somehow just reply back to the voicemail. So she was sending us these voicemails. She wasn't bothering to call us. She was sending us these voicemails, very upset, thinking that we were trying to compete with her. And what I realized is that she didn't really hear what we had said. She heard something, got triggered, and could not hear anything past that at that point. And Gina Dawn was just leaving her these very kind, understanding messages, telling her, no, we're not trying to compete with you. We just want to share with you some ideas. And of course, if you're going to do your Magdalene Circle, we won't do a Magdalene Circle because we don't want to compete with that. But we would like to maybe help out and be involved and blah, blah, blah. So what happened was that over time, Nicole could just never hear that. She just got angrier and angrier and kind of kept escalating. And eventually she said that the only way she would talk about this is if we had a compassionate, nonviolent, compassionate communication facilitator present, because somehow she was feeling unsafe. The things we were saying to her made her feel unsafe. And that these were the only dates and the only times that she could be available. None of the times worked for me. The other part of this was we all had to pay for this. So we were all going to have to chip in whatever the facilitator's fee was going to be. We'd each pay 1/3 of that. I was like, are you kidding me? First of all, I haven't done nothing but support. I felt like I've done nothing but support you ever. I've never tried to compete with you. I can't even begin to understand where you're coming from on this, because this is just making no sense to me at all. And I felt so hurt. I was devastated. I was like, how could Nicole ever think that I would compete with her when all I've ever done is try to support her and had helped her fund her so she could write her book, and just all these things that I had done did not make sense. So I wasn't able to meet at the times, and basically the whole thing just got dropped and forgotten. And then my life was falling apart. It turned out my second husband was having major mental health issues, and the challenge, the additional challenge of that was that Jeff had been through the priest process with Nicole and had emerged as a priest in 1997, and now he was in just this terrible place mentally. I created an intervention for him. I helped him in every way I possibly could. Eventually he asked for a divorce and we separated. So now we're going to fast forward to 2006. And meanwhile, my only connection to the priestess community is really through my Magdalene Circle that's still meeting monthly from 2001 to 2006. In March of 2006, I get a voicemail message saying that Nicole is going in for surgery for her breast cancer that has returned, and that she's not accepting visitors or phone calls, but she is accepting cards. And here's the address. So I wrote her a card, and by this time I have moved out. I have been living on my own. I have been I've actually met my my soon-to-be next husband at this time, and so I'm writing her and just thanking her deeply and profoundly for the gifts she has given me, and the priestess process and everything that has happened, and kind of updating her on my life and where things are at. And part of that update included my relationship with Peter, and that we were going to Scotland and we were going to Rosslyn Chapel. Part of definitely a big part of the whole journey that she had been energizing with the Journey to Wholeness back in 1996. And so I shared all that and then sent it to her. This was in March of 2006. In June of 2006, I got an email from her, from Nicole. And I wasn't expecting to hear a response back, and I wasn't attached. The other thing, just to say, was that right before I got this voicemail about what was going on with Nicole and her health, I had had a dream. And in the dream, I actually had two dreams that were very similar. Basically was in a huge hotel, big lobby, big fancy, ornate, beautifully done. And Nicole comes riding in on a chariot pulled by lions into the lobby of the hotel. And I'm so excited to see her. I run to say hello and hug her, and she pushes me back. She says, "Stop, no." She said, and she pushes me back, and she steps back, and she stands up in her fullest presence that she can muster, and she said, "This had to happen. You needed to go on and to develop your own sense of self without me, and it needed to happen." And then she gets on her chariot and she rides out, and I was like, whoa. And when I woke up from that dream, something really shifted for me, because I still, when I think about it, it hurt. It was painful. I felt like I couldn't understand why she had been, I had been, in a sense, cast out. Another piece I forgot to mention is that Gina, Dawn, Jeanette, and I had gone to the chapel after all this happened back in 2001. And we'd been watching the Matrix movie. We watched it as a ceremony. And then we went to the chapel and we decided we were going to unplug from everything that was of a distorted energy around the priestess archetype. And it was a powerful ceremony. And the biggest piece that I remember that came through for me was going from being the black sheep of my family. I was disowned and disinherited. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. To being the shining star in the priestess community and being able to step up and bring my gifts and be recognized. And Nicole and I, for every ceremony, she did the as within, so without. I did the as above, so below at the center of the circle. And we did lots of ceremonies like that. And now suddenly I'm not involved in any of it for 5 years. So anyway, having this dream really helped me to have a deeper understanding, like, okay, I get it. And when I was writing her this card, it was really from a heartfelt place of gratitude and appreciation, and having processed my own anger, my own grief, my own whatever I needed to process around what had happened. So then I get the email from her, and one of the things she says is she's now working on this new energy of the Venus Templar thing. She's going to be doing an event in February of 2007, and she'd love for my input and for me to be involved, if that would work for me. And she said also she had been planning to go to Rosslyn Chapel, but due to her health situation, she wasn't going, and she was acknowledging that I had that piece. Like, me, actually, and 3 other priestesses were there, along with Peter, who Nicole eventually anointed as a divine creation high priest. So So what happened next was that um, we met Nicole in, I think it was in October of 2006. Peter and I met her at the Botanical Gardens, and we didn't talk anything about anything that had happened. It was like Nicole's whole mantra had been, I'm only looking forward, I'm not looking back. And she had been saying this now for a few years. And I felt fairly complete, so I didn't feel a need to bring it up or talk to her about it. And it was as if I was immediately welcomed back into the fold. And so Peter and I wound up playing a very important part in the Venus Templar ceremonies in 2007 around the twin flame piece, something I'll share more about another time. And then Nicole came to visit us in 2008 at Peter's Place in Wisconsin. So for those of you who don't know, Nicole was born in Wisconsin, raised in Wisconsin, and we were able to take her to Madison, where her father worked at the University of Wisconsin, and we went to some sacred sites, and we did some amazing things with her there. And she was collecting prayers and dirt from different places, so she was able to collect dirt from Wisconsin and put it in her ostrich egg that she was that I eventually wound up taking to, after she died, taking to Kansas City for it to be worked with ceremonially at a priestess gathering there in 2009. So, but what was the most remarkable thing that happened while she was visiting us in 2008 was that she and I went for a walk one morning through a park. It's up and down hills, beautiful out in nature place, one of Nicole's favorite places to be, in Nashotah Park. And she was asking me about my sister, what had happened with my sister. And the reason she was asking me was because when I started the priestess process, my great aunt had just died. She raised my dad when his mother died, and she had disowned me because I got pregnant outside of marriage. And well, this was the reason I was told, but what I later found out was that she had actually rewritten her will before I was ever divorced from my first husband. So that was not the reason, but that was what I was told was the reason. And my sister was inheriting $200,000 plus $200,000 plus dollars. I don't know the exact amount. It was more than that, and there were a couple of things in my aunt's will, a bond that I got, and something else that she hadn't changed the name on, so they came to me. They came directly to me, and it was just enough money for me to do the priestess process. So I was really grateful. And Nicole happened to be there when my sister called at my house one time, and so I wound up sharing the story with her. But my sister was just being horrible about the whole situation, and she said, "You need to address this with her." And so I sent her a letter, and the whole thing, it just basically meant we didn't speak for many years. And so eventually, and I was mad, I was hurt, and I was angry about this whole situation, especially because the way that my sister justified what she was doing was that she was honoring the wishes of the dead. And I just felt that that was her justification. And that she had no respect or understanding of my situation, which was not good financially at the time. So that added to my hurt about the situation. Anyway, so fast forwarding to Nicole and I walking through Nashotah Park. Oh, and I will say I did try to connect with my sister. After I got over my hurt, my mother's dying wish was that I make it right with my sister. That made me mad, and it took me several more years to get over that. And so, my human deeply hurt self. So it took me a while, but I finally did reach out to her, and my sister was having none of it. She was just mean and nasty and horrible to me. So I was like, well, I guess we're not having a relationship. So anyway, Nicole asked me about her, and I told her what was going on, and I said, she's just not willing at all to have any conversation or any owning any part of whatever her thing is. And And she's just being mean. So we just have no relationship. And Nicole looks at me and she says, do we have anything to clear? I was startled and stunned. And my first response was, no, I think we're good. Because I didn't really know what to say. And then I explained to her that I had about the dream I had had and how I felt that dream really explained to me what was going on. And Nicole's response was, oh, thank God, because that was crazy. What I was doing and how I was behaving was crazy. I don't understand it. And so all these years later, she was, beyond whatever the triggering was, whatever the activation was for her, she got beyond it and she was able to acknowledge to me that her behavior was completely crazy, which was good because I didn't know. I mean, I looked and I did deep processing work around what did I do wrong? How did I create this situation? How did I make this happen? Was there anything I could have done differently so that this wouldn't have happened? And I could never really figure anything out. And so that acknowledgement from Nicole was just beyond precious for me. So just want to also share that this was in 2008. My youngest son had come back to live with us, and I wound up going back to Tucson in August of 2008 rather than October of 2008. And Nicole passed in October. So the universe kind of set it up, and we got to go to the movies. Nicole and I took a drumming class together. It's like we were hanging out and doing things, and it was just so much fun. And then in early October of 2008, I still wouldn't have been back from Wisconsin. She called together Nicole. She called us together. She called together Karen and Jeanette and Catherine and myself. She called us together and she told us that her guidance was that she was going to be gone. This is early October. She was going to be gone by Samhain. And we were stunned. We were all just stunned. And I couldn't even imagine. She seemed like pretty together at that point. And she wanted us to help with collecting all the Priestess Magdalene stuff that she had so that it wouldn't go to her family because she didn't want her family to have it. She wanted the priestess community to have it. And she started making lists of things. And she also said she did not want anyone to be there for her. She didn't want us to help her. She didn't want us to be with her when she died. She didn't want any of that. She just wanted to do her own thing. So we listened respectfully. When I got home, I waited a day or two and I called her and left her a message and I invited her to consider allowing us to be a part of her dying process. And I reminded her about how powerful it was when my mom died, all the priestesses got to be a part of that and how that was really powerful for them. And that was a gift that she gave, my mom gave to the priestesses and the priestesses gave to her. And that would be the same thing if she would allow us to be a part of it. So she did. So basically she called back and she said, okay, you're right. I'm going to allow you to, you can all be a part of this process. So when Nicole went into hospice, the night she went into hospice, I think it was like October 16th, she wrote a letter to all her Divine Creation High Priestesses, sent an email and said that she felt that they would benefit from completing their process with me and Peter. And that then she sent me an email after she had done this and said, I hope that was okay. And in a way, I felt like this was another way of her honoring me again. And I hadn't even been through the Divine Creation High Priestess process, except that when I'd been to one of the initiation ceremonies at the door, she asked me if I realized I was being initiated as a Divine Creation High Priestess. And I was kind of surprised because usually she asked if she knew I was going to witness a ceremony, if I knew I was going to witness it. But this time she asked if knew I was being initiated. I just kind of rolled with it. I just said yes and walked in and didn't realize that later I was going to literally be facilitating this process. So we had this amazing gift of being with Nicole. And one of the things we did, Ashera, you can see her back here, she knew how to wash her body, dress her in her ceremonial clothes. We put flower petals all around her. We put goddess cards. We said ceremonies and intention. You can see Jeanette is rattling here as we are honoring Nicole after she has passed. This was life-changing again. And one of the things, suddenly I just got this insight as we're standing there honoring her and giving gratitude for her life and remembering her in all the best ways possible. I was like, okay, we all need to now proclaim that we are divine creation high priestesses and Peter, divine creation high priest, so that we get her medicine and what she brought through and how she brought through this process, so that we can facilitate this for other people. And so we claimed that, and we all claimed that. And Karen, Jeanette, and Spirit Dancer and I still meet to this day, not every month, but regularly as Divine Creation High Priestesses. Peter used to meet with us, but now he's involved in other things and doing other things, so he just kind of sends his energy from afar. So this was really powerful. And the gift of being able to be with her at her death, the gift of being able to be part of this journey. And interestingly, I just put this in here because to complete this story. On this side, these are actually hanging in my office, and I couldn't get a good picture of them because there's a lot of glare and so on going on. So I went and found them to get the better picture of them. But these were things that that Nicole gave to me, the 44 New Earth Stargate. This is the cross of Quetzalcoatl, activating the cross in our divine light body. Through this channel, one is reborn to the deeper pulse of the galactic waveform serpent. I don't understand all of what that means, but I want to connect with Maya and find out more. We've been connecting a lot more lately. And this Ariel Pax, and she is a vehicle for ascension, like it spins. I guess it's a spinning kind of visual kind of thing. She comes up with these amazing things that she channels in from Thoth. And he calls the 44 for the 4444 Ascension Stargate, the Star Grail. And this kind of looks like the Grail Cup. And as a torsion field, becoming the crucible for transport when it's spinning. So these were things that were very prominent in the Venus Templar work, the work that Maya was bringing through and is still bringing through, the work that Nicole is bringing through is still coming through us. And so just in completion, what I want to say is that I appreciate that Nicole was human and she had a human response to something she thought she heard. It wasn't what we were saying, but it's something she was hearing. So our opportunity and what the gift we can get out of this is that sometimes what we're hearing is not what another person is trying to say. So deepening our ability to communicate with one another, to do reflective listening, to be open if we find ourselves being triggered to the possibility that what we heard isn't what was meant. Also, the opportunity to really support one another in our communication, to enhance the realm of communication. Interestingly, Nicole wanted to have a nonviolent, compassionate communication facilitator present. So she was interested in communication at that point, but she wasn't willing to realize that maybe what she heard wasn't what we meant. And so she was still feeling threatened and unsafe. So this is, and to not take it personally. Oh my gosh, I took this all so very personally. And really, when you can step back and look at it from a higher perspective, and from what Nicole said to me about this not being, that this had to happen in the dream. I had to get it in the dream. And that it helped me to be able to then process what had happened. So these are all powerful gifts, and that ultimately when we can then sit and really listen to each other and speak from our hearts, and we can clear the shadow pieces, even if it takes 5 years or 6 or 7 or 8 years, because really Nicole and I didn't speak about this until 7 years later. I guess it was about 7 years later, when she had said to me that her behavior had been crazy and she didn't understand it either. And thank God that I'd had that dream. So these are the gifts that we get from this journey, from how we as priestess sisters can keep enhancing the field, can keep growing in our ability to communicate, to celebrate each other, to support one another, to work together, to be in co-creation, collaboration, and cooperation. I am so deeply grateful I had the opportunity to share this with you. Thank you.